you know, I always thought I was a badass, but it's like cool for people to say that.
All right, everyone. Today we're taking the deep plunge into Tess Holliday. And when I say deep plunge, it's actually more of a 2-inch puddle, considering of how much information there is about Tess Holliday out there. But the reason I wanted to talk, I don't know how I like my search results on YouTube always get so fucked up when I start making videos again because I just get recommended a bunch of stuff. So I got recommended this interview that Tess Holliday had with in Variety, I think it's called. It doesn't matter. It will be in the title. Uh, but essentially she talks about her opinions on the fat acceptance movement and her how she's formed in life and stuff like that. So I thought we would analyze it. Also, as a forewarning, I'm going to use several clips from what society would call provocateurs, to put it lightly. But I personally think that provocateurs are some of the most interesting people. I mean, like Tess Holliday is a provocateur, Amerlyn Reed is a provocateur. It's people that spark discussion and make you think. Now, obviously, the latter two that I mentioned are provocateurs with no substance and just it's just vapid air. And some of the people that I'm going to show clips of are people that I might not agree with every aspect that they talk about, but I think that they bring an interesting viewpoint to a lot of the topic points that Tess Holliday will say. So, uh, let's get into it, shall we?
Tess Holliday, and I'm a badass woman.
All right, Tess, you say you're a badass woman. I don't really know what is so badass about you. One of the aspects of the fat acceptance movement that I thought is or think is so interesting is they try and champion this idea of being against the grain or like anti-culture. You know, it's sort of like how like the rock and roll movement was, and then like the grunge scene. Anti-establishment, anti-culture. But the crazy thing is, you can't be anti-culture if every social media platform advocates for you and like shuns people that disagree with you. So, uh, badass bitch. I mean, we'll get into it, but I don't see how being 250 pounds overweight and having to probably sit all the time and not being able to move around is badass and awesome. So let's keep going.
Being bullied all through school was really hard, especially because I didn't really have any support. I developed a thick skin. It also could be just because I'm really fat.
So you have to give Tess Holiday some credit. Self-aware, sort of funny. Uh, and I want to apologize for this fucking the background music that they use when they're asking her questions and the fucking whatever company this is could not figure out how to level out the sound of a fucking interview. So I'll try my best to adjust it, but it won't be perfect because they couldn't figure it out from the start. So we get into the idea of being bullied, and one of the clips that I want to use is from Milo Yiannopoulos, which just saying his name is probably going to send Susan Wojcicki after me and smite down the channel. I won't go into everything about who Milo Yiannopoulos is. He is a extremely controversial figure for a lot of reasons, but as I stated in the intro, I think he is an extremely interesting provocateur. He is very against the grain, but he also speaks what I think a lot of people are afraid to say in society today for fear of being extreme backlash. I think it's thoughts that people think in the back of their head, but either feels socially unacceptable or is just mean. Um, so I'm going to inlay this clip here for you to to savor a little bit. Into talking about whether or not fat shaming should be acceptable. Now, some of the phrasing that he uses, I think, is wrong. Uh, this whole, if you've never seen this Joe Rogan episode with him, I think it's extremely interesting. So it's something that I think is worth checking out. He explains that he uh, fat shamed somebody in a gym because he doesn't think that somebody like that should be in public. And then he goes on to talk about how he believes that fat shaming is actually a net positive when it comes to having people change their methods and their eating habits and their activity levels because of this fear of how society will perceive them. Now, in my opinion, as I stated before, it's the idea of he's sort of saying things that you sort of think in the back of your head. So, with my own experience, part of the reason why I lost so much weight when I started to lose weight was because of this public perception, but it's also the idea of being uncomfortable with yourself. So you wanna, and like I am a relatively introverted person, so I've never really been somebody that wants to draw a ton of attention to myself. And also I don't seek the attention. I don't need the attention. It's not something that I'm ever looking for. So being morbidly obese was such a trigger or a focal point for people to really look at. So it was something that I wanted to change. And also, I mean, when I started losing weight, I was going to the gym at night to avoid as many people as possible because when you start losing weight and you start going to the gym, it's something that is really awkward and uncomfortable for you, and like your mindset is pretty weak when you're severely obese, contrary to what Tess and a lot of other fat acceptance people will claim. Your mindset's really weak, and any bump in the road makes you want to quit and makes you want to have backlash and shout back at people. Um, so essentially, now he goes on to talk about whether or not fat people should be in the gym and stuff like that, and that's an aspect that I wholeheartedly disagree against. Obviously, losing weight is 95% in the kitchen and 5% in your activity level, and your activity level doesn't have to be in the gym. Um, so in that aspect I understand, but building muscle and building up a schedule of being active is always a positive thing. So I don't think it's something that should ever be discouraged, but certainly an interesting aspect of thought. So we'll keep going.
If designers don't start being more diverse and inclusive with their campaigns and their sizing, that they will be left behind.
So I apologize that you had to sit through that fucking crime of a sentence that Tess tried to put together. Now, obviously, I'm no fucking soiree when it comes to speaking, and obviously she's doing this all on a whim, on a spot, but you can't talk like this in broken pieces because it makes me want to fucking kill myself. But does that mean it was probably a little bit mean. But she goes on to talk about inclusivity of major brands of clothing companies. So this has always been a hot point with the fat acceptance movement about, oh, why does my quadruple XL cost $10 more than a medium, uh, and shit like that. The scary part is like, if you look at the obesity rates now, we don't have the updated information. I think the latest is from 2018, but it just shows what percentage of like states are obese and like the increase of obesity as time has gone along. Um, and it's pretty scary to see it. And another clip I'll insert here is from Bill Maher. If you know who Bill Maher is, he's a late night talk show host on HBO. Another interesting provocateur. Uh, and he essentially talks about all of the negatives associated with the fat acceptance and being fat and being obese, uh, and his comparison between old and new. So I'll drop that in right here.
Why do people have so many pre-existing conditions? Being fat isn't a birth defect. Nobody comes out of the womb needing to buy 2 seats on the airplane. Here it is in a nutshell from the New York Times. Poor diet is the leading cause of mortality in the United States. Europe doesn't look like this because Europe's not always eating for 2. We weren't always like this. Watching the footage of the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, I was struck by how not fat everyone in the crowd was. We looked like a completely different race of people. Now look at us. We wear shirts that our ancestors could have used as a sail.
So this whole idea of I it's such a the fat acceptance movement is so weird in the fact that they try and preach this idea of inclusivity and everybody counts, but they're very like my opinion of I don't like the fat acceptance movement. I think it's unhealthy, and I think their mindset is in the wrong place. I'm shut down for having a thought like that. I'm not accepted in their fat acceptance movement. Also, uh, men are disproportionately unrepresented in the fat acceptance movement. It is 99% women, and being a fat male does not really matter. Um, I mean, there's a plethora of memes and other articles associated with talking about situations like this about how if a fat woman gets a skinny dude, it's slay girl, but if a skinny girl gets a fat guy, it's you can do better, stuff like that. In my opinion, now there the argument of what is beauty, and Bill Maher touches on this, what's beauty, and he says it's in the eye of the beholder, and I think that's partially true. Uh, I think a lot of it is from our primal relations in our ancestry. There's a reason that big butt, skinny waist, big tits women are idolized, and morbidly obese giant people are not. And it's all primal based. It's all about procreation. So sure, it's in the eye of the beholder. I personally don't know any skinnier people who are attracted to fatter people. Not saying they don't exist, not saying they're not allowed to. You can love whoever the fuck you want. It doesn't really matter to me, but I'm just saying, predominantly, myself included, I'm looking for a healthier person than some grotesquely overweight person. So we'll keep going.
I love myself now more than I did when I was smaller because I just realized that I could have the great life I wanted regardless of my size.
So, can you truly have the life now? Tess might be an exception because I'm sure she's a multimillionaire, um, especially with all the fucking claim that she gets from the internet and shit. Um, I'm sure she does perfectly fine. So her situation is much different than a low income house that lives in Indiana or something like that, you know. Uh, those two are not like, but can you truly? I mean, you can't fucking. If I want to go on a run in the morning, you can't go on a run with me. If I want to walk around the park, you probably can't walk around the park with me because it's too long and your legs will get sore. If I want to go on a roller coaster, you can't go on a roller coaster with me. If I want to get in a car, if I, you're probably not allowing, if I'm driving a four-seater car, we could probably take three if you're going. Uh, there's a lot of planes. I mean, there's an incredible amount of other options that being fat negatively affects your life. And going back to the Bill Maher clip of showing how different health conditions are attributed to being overweight and being obese. It they're I I don't even know what is a positive of being obese. I don't think there are any, if I'm being completely honest. Outside of the fact that being obese somehow in today's society is praised and allowed and not deemed as wrong and evil. Evil is probably too strong of a word, but hopefully you understand my point. But we'll keep going. Let's see what else she has to say.
Rules that you have to follow. No one is making these rules except for you.
This clip here, how can I talk about it without just being like, damn, look how fucking huge and I mean this clip can be maybe the fucking fashion designer. I mean, that outfit looks like ass. I don't know what it is. I'm sure it's a bunch of fucking cutouts of like being fat's okay and shit like that, but it's ill form fitting. She's huge. White does not really look good on really fat people. Black looks good on everybody because it hides your shapes. White enhances your shapes. So if you're really fat and you wear white, you're gonna see every crease and fold that is on your body. So sure, being proud of yourself is fine, I guess, but I want to include this clip, or not clip, but these two images side by side. These are two Calvin Klein advertisements. I think they're in England somewhere. Uh, but the one on the left is from several years ago, and the one on the right is much more recent, within like the past year or two. And so, going back to this idea of what beauty standards are, in terms, there's a fine line that you have to toe around when you're talking about beauty, because being obese should not be idolized in any way. I think being comfortable with who you are and what you look like outside of the obesity factor is perfectly normal and perfectly acceptable. Um, I can't remember. I want to say it's something related with Target or it's some clothing brand, I think, or maybe it's like a woman's razor where they show like a di- a divi ooh, a diverse group of women, and I think that is a message that you should be pushing a little bit more. And honestly, people criminalize what models look like. And granted, there are several instances where models are photoshopped and that's not how they actually look and yada 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 yada. But I don't think there's any problem with somebody looking up to a bodybuilder and aspiring to look like how they looked, or somebody looking at a model and aspiring to look how they look. And now, women, the issue with women is much more different in this situation. There's a lot more um, mental issues and eating disorders that come associated with that. So I completely understand some of the hesitancy related with that, but seeing somebody who's in good shape and somebody who is strong, I don't see a problem with you looking up to and wanting to aspire to be. And it all comes down to yourself and how far your own genetics can allow you to get. So, certainly not being discouraged that, I mean, I will never look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not 6'5" and I can't bench 400, probably more than that, 600 pounds. So, um, and probably never will be able to, but it's not something that should halt me from trying to reach my goals. So let's see what the last clip is all about.
You are great just as you are, and if people don't believe it, then you show them.
All right, so I will not talk a ton about this topic. I have one last clip that I will use to close out the video. That is from Jordan Peterson talking about being your better self. It's once again from the Joe Rogan podcast. But essentially talking about how you can't become complacent in your life and you need to always strive to be the best person you can be. And comparing yourself to a future self or a past self is something that you should constantly be doing, and you becoming stagnant is no longer good. So I'll play that clip, and that'll be the end. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I'll add this clip, and I will see you guys some other time. Thanks.
Rules for life. Rule 4 is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
Yes.
Because you need to have a hierarchy of improvement. You need to be aiming for something, and that means you're going to be lesser than people who've already attained along that dimension.
Yes.
And that can give rise to envy. So the question is, who should you defeat in the final analysis? And the answer is, you should defeat your former self. You should be constantly trying to do that. And you're the right control for yourself too, because you're the one who's had all your advantages and disadvantages. And so if you want to compete fairly with someone, then you should be competing with you. And it is the case, and this is what we were talking about too with regards to the self-improvement of the fighter, is, well, if you're improving yourself, then what you are doing is competing with your lesser self. And then you might also ask, well, what is that lesser self? And that lesser self would be resentful and bitter and aggressive and vengeance-seeking and all of those things that go along with having a negative moral character. And those are things that interfere with your ability to progress as you move forward through life.